I was born into a world of privilege, shielded by wealth and comfort. Yet life would soon teach me that privilege alone is no safeguard against the storms of destiny. Disease, uncertainty, and human suffering do not discriminate. They arrive unbidden, challenging the spirit, testing resolve, and shaping character. From my earliest days, I confronted the tensions between expectation and reality. My family's influence opened doors, but it also imposed weighty expectations to achieve, to excel, to live up to a name already etched into society. I understood early that public life is not a gentle path. It is a relentless test, where success is measured not in accolades, but in the strength to endure scrutiny, failure, and the judgment of others. Yet no trial would prepare me fully for what lay ahead. In 1921, when the grip of polio robbed me of my mobility, the world seemed to close in. There were days when I questioned my future, when despair whispered that my ambitions had ended before they had truly begun. But in that darkness, I discovered resilience. I learned that leadership is forged in the crucible of adversity, that courage is not absence of fear, but the choice to move forward in spite of it. By the time I entered the political arena in earnest, America was already teetering on the edge. The late 1920s brought economic turbulence, hints of systemic fragility that would soon erupt into catastrophe. And then, as if the heavens conspired to test my resolve, the Great Depression descended upon the nation, a crushing wave of unemployment, poverty, and despair. Millions cried out for guidance, for hope, for someone to hold the weight of the nation's suffering. And I answered that call, aware that every decision carried the weight of countless lives. That I stood at the crossroads of history, facing critics, skeptics, and the relentless pressure of public expectation. Policies I proposed were debated with ferocity, every misstep magnified, every success scrutinized. I understood that leadership demands not only vision, but unyielding commitment to principle, tempered with pragmatism. Compromise is inevitable, but the core of integrity must never bend. And then came the storm that would engulf the entire world. While America struggled to recover from its own wounds, conflict raged overseas. Democracies trembled, authoritarian powers rose, and the shadow of global war loomed ever closer. The choices I made, every alliance, every policy, every act of courage or caution, were not merely political, they were moral imperatives. The lives of millions and the future of nations rested upon the delicate balance of decision, action, and consequence. That I would learn, again and again, that leadership is inseparable from responsibility, and responsibility from judgment. Public life offers no sanctuary. There is no retreat from the consequences of action or inaction. Each moment carries weight. Each choice resonates beyond immediate perception, and every failure leaves indelible marks on history. Through these trials, I also understood the paradox of power. The higher one rises, the greater the vulnerability, and the sharper the scrutiny. The roar of applause is fleeting, the echo of judgment is long. And yet, there is profound purpose in service, a deeper reward in striving for the collective good beyond personal comfort, beyond political survival, beyond acclaim. This is the story of my life. Not just the milestones and triumphs, but the unseen struggles, the moral dilemmas, and the relentless pursuit to guide a nation through despair, uncertainty, and peril. Step with me into the corridors of power, the private halls of reflection, and the turbulent seas of history. Witness the controversies, the crises, and the decisions that would shape not only my destiny but the fate of a nation at its most perilous hour. I am Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and this is my journey. I was born on January 30th, 1882, in Hyde Park, New York, into a world both comfortable and constraining. My family's wealth and social standing offered a life of privilege, yet with it came invisible burdens, a constant expectation to uphold the family name, to perform with grace, intellect, and poise. From my earliest memories, I understood that privilege was not merely a gift but a responsibility, a challenge to live in a manner worthy of those who came before me. The Hudson Valley, with its rolling hills and vast river, became the stage of my youth. I walked its paths and studied its communities, noting both abundance and struggle. I watched the people, learned their ways, and felt early the stark contrast between comfort and hardship. I realized that the world beyond my family's estate was fraught with challenge, and that understanding it was essential to the life I envisioned. Leadership, I sensed even then, required awareness, empathy, and a willingness to shoulder burdens far greater than one's own. Education became my sanctuary and proving ground. At Groton School, I was immersed in a regime of discipline, moral instruction, and rigorous study. The teachers demanded more than intelligence. They demanded character, ethical judgment, and perseverance. Lessons in honor and personal responsibility were etched deeply into me. I recall the long hours of study, the debates in the dining hall, the silent reflections during walks along tree-lined paths. These experiences taught me that the measure of a person is revealed not in comfort, applause, or privilege, but in endurance under pressure, in moral decision-making when no one is watching. Even in childhood, I encountered the first true tests of patience and humility. Though wealth shielded me from physical want, it could not shield me from the world's inequities or from the personal challenges that would come. I observed the struggles of those less fortunate, the laborers, farmers, and families who faced daily uncertainty. These observations stirred something deep within me, a sense of social duty, a recognition that life's privileges come with obligations to serve and to understand the lives of others. Family life offered both guidance and pressure. My father, James Roosevelt, was stern yet fair, emphasizing diligence, propriety, and responsibility. He taught me that accomplishments mean little without integrity, that intellect must be paired with ethical action. My mother, Sarah Delano Roosevelt, embodied grace, empathy, and refined judgment. From her, I learned the importance of reflection, compassion, and diplomacy. Their combined influence instilled in me both the rigor of discipline and the sensitivity necessary for leadership. Even as a boy, I felt the pull of public life. I read newspapers with scrutiny, absorbed political debates, and began to form opinions about the world's structure and its injustices. I noted how decisions in Albany, Washington, or even abroad rippled through ordinary lives. Leadership, I realized, was not abstract or symbolic. It had tangible consequences. This awareness ignited an ambition within me, a desire to shape society not merely for personal gain, but to elevate opportunity, justice, and human welfare. Yet alongside curiosity and ambition, I confronted moments of self-doubt and frustration. Life demanded resilience. Achievements did not come easily, and privilege could not shield me from disappointment, criticism, or the harsh lessons of personal failure. I recall times when expectations weighed heavily, when the expectations of family, school, and society pressed upon me relentlessly. These early pressures became the forge of character, teaching me that true strength is not measured by comfort, but by perseverance through adversity. That I was fortunate to have mentors who guided me, challenged me, and demanded accountability. Their lessons were both subtle and profound. The importance of observation, listening before acting, and the interplay between principle and pragmatism. From long discussions about politics and society to quiet counsel on moral dilemmas, I began to cultivate a mindset that balanced thoughtfulness with decisiveness, a balance that would define my approach to public service. Nature and environment also played a formative role. Days spent walking along the Hudson River, exploring the woods, and observing the cycles of seasons taught me patience, reflection, and perspective. The calm of the river contrasted with the complexities of human society, reminding me that leadership must reconcile immediate crises with long-term vision. Friendships and early social interactions were lessons in diplomacy and negotiation. At Groton and in Hyde Park, I learned to navigate social hierarchies, to mediate differences, and to understand the subtleties of human behavior. Leadership, I realized, was as much about understanding people as it was about ideas. One misstep in judgment, one failure to perceive nuance, could unravel influence and goodwill. Even as I prepared for the next stage of life, higher education loomed as both an opportunity and a challenge. Harvard represented not just academic rigor, but exposure to broader society, politics, and culture. My early experiences, privilege tempered by responsibility, observation tempered by empathy, and ambition tempered by humility, would guide my approach to the trials awaiting me there. In reflection, my childhood was a crucible. Every lesson, every observation, Every small trial prepared me for the responsibilities that awaited. I learned that privilege brings obligation, that awareness brings responsibility, and that character is forged in the quiet moments, long before public recognition ever arrives. The foundations of duty, empathy, perseverance, and intellectual curiosity were laid early, and they would sustain me through the challenges of politics, leadership, and history itself. These formative years also taught me about the paradox of human life. Comfort does not prevent adversity. Wealth does not prevent moral reckoning. Status does not prevent scrutiny. I would carry these lessons into adulthood, into the political arena, and ultimately into the presidency itself. To lead a nation, I realized, one must first understand humanity, not as an abstract concept, but in its daily struggles, hopes, fears, and triumphs. In Hyde Park, walking the paths of my youth, reflecting on the lessons of family, education, and early social observation, I began to shape the vision of who I would become. These hours, these years, were not merely preparation. They were a mirror, reflecting both the potential for greatness and the necessity of resilience, empathy, and courage. They would serve as the bedrock upon which I would later confront the Great Depression, global conflict, and the unrelenting demands of public life. I am Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and the journey from these early days, full of privilege, pressure, discovery, and challenge, would carry me forward into the storms and triumphs of history yet to unfold. As I transitioned from the hallways of Harvard to the bustling streets of New York, I understood that education alone was insufficient to shape a life of purpose. The world awaited not just knowledge, but action, and I was determined to make my mark. Politics, I realized, was not merely about office or title. It was the arena where ideas clashed, where vision met resistance, and where the welfare of ordinary people could be profoundly influenced. My entry into public life began in earnest in 1910, when I accepted the opportunity to serve in the New York State Senate. Those early years were both exhilarating and humbling. I confronted legislation that affected the lives of farmers, laborers, and business owners alike. I learned that compromise is often necessary, yet conviction must remain steadfast. It was in these debates, hearings, and committee meetings that I first sensed the true responsibility of public service, the awareness that decisions made in chambers of government ripple outward, touching countless lives in ways both visible and unseen. Marriage and family life became intertwined with my political identity. In 1905, I married Eleanor, a woman whose intellect, compassion, and fortitude would challenge and inspire me throughout my life. Our union was more than personal. It was a partnership of ideals, shared vision, and commitment to public service. Through her insight and tireless advocacy, I came to understand the broader dimensions of social responsibility, particularly the struggles faced by women, children, and marginalized communities. Eleanor's influence was both grounding and enlightening, shaping my approach to leadership and public policy in ways that continue to resonate. The world, however, was not content to remain static. As the 1910s unfolded, the United States faced profound social and economic changes. Industrialization accelerated, cities swelled with immigrants, and labor unrest punctuated the rhythms of daily life. In these tumultuous times, I recognized that effective leadership demanded both empathy and decisiveness. Policy could not be abstract. It had to respond to tangible human needs. I sought to understand the concerns of everyday citizens, to bridge the gap between the corridors of power and the realities of streets, factories, and farms. My early work also included serving as Assistant Secretary of the Navy during World War I, a role that exposed me to both the machinery of government and the demands of military readiness. Though I did not see combat, the experience taught me lessons in logistics, organization, and strategic planning. I witnessed the interplay of politics, public opinion, and operational necessity, realizing that leadership often requires balancing idealism with practical constraints. The stakes were high: the lives of young men, the security of the nation, and the credibility of democratic institutions hung in the balance. Yet politics was never solely about policy or administration. It was also about vision, persuasion, and the art of coalition building. I learned that public trust is fragile, earned through transparency, consistency, and genuine concern for the common good. Missteps are remembered longer than successes, and a leader's reputation is shaped as much by character as by accomplishment. Early victories and defeats alike taught me humility, patience, and the necessity of constant reflection. Throughout these years, I maintained a commitment to social progress. I advocated for labor protections, improved housing, and public health initiatives. I understood that a thriving democracy depends not only on economic prosperity, but on the dignity and well-being of its citizens. It was during these formative political years that I honed the principles that would later guide the New Deal, shaping my belief that government must act as a force to promote justice, opportunity, and security for all. Challenges were ever present. Partisan politics, entrenched interests, and the inertia of established systems tested my resolve daily. I faced criticism, opposition, and doubt from colleagues and constituents alike. And yet, each obstacle reinforced the necessity of persistence, strategic thinking, and unwavering adherence to principle. I learned that leadership requires stamina, courage, and an unrelenting commitment to the public good. Even when recognition is delayed or accolades are absent, as I reflect on my early political career, I see it as a period of both preparation and awakening. The knowledge gained, relationships formed, and moral lessons absorbed would serve as the foundation for all that was to come. I learned that public service is not a path of convenience. It is a path of responsibility, sacrifice, and continuous growth. Every legislative debate, every constituent concern, every challenge faced within and beyond the halls of government contributed to the shaping of a leader ready to confront the crises of a nation in peril. These years also revealed a personal truth. Leadership is inseparable from empathy. Understanding the struggles, fears, and aspirations of others is as critical as devising policies or strategies. A leader must listen as much as they act, observe as much as they decide. It was this balance of insight and initiative, compassion and pragmatism that would define the trajectory of my life, guiding me toward the monumental challenges that awaited during the Great Depression and the Second World War. In these early political years, I discovered the core of my own resilience and purpose. I recognized that influence is a responsibility, not a privilege, that power without principle is destructive, and that the highest calling of public service is to serve the people with integrity, courage, and vision. These foundational years, rich in both struggle and learning, set the stage for the leadership, trials, and historical impact that would define my presidency. Asterisk. The years I spent as governor of New York were among the most formative of my life. I assumed office in 1929, at a time when the state faced unprecedented economic turbulence and social unrest. The onset of the Great Depression was not a distant news story. It was a tangible, immediate crisis touching every corner of the state. Families were losing homes, breadlines stretched for blocks, and despair was palpable in communities that had once thrived. I quickly realized that leadership in times of crisis demands both urgency and foresight. Decisions could not wait for consensus. Yet, every action had consequences, and every misstep could magnify suffering. I convened experts, studied policy options, and sought practical solutions to problems that had no precedent. Public welfare programs, unemployment relief, and labor protections became my immediate priorities. But beyond policy, I understood that morale, both among the populace and within government, was as critical as any legislation. Confidence, hope, and trust had to be restored before recovery could begin. The role of governor also illuminated the intricate interplay between state and federal power. I observed how national economic policy, political inertia in Washington, and bureaucratic limitations constrained immediate action. I learned to navigate these forces, to advocate for New York while preparing strategies that could later scale to national application. I honed the ability to communicate effectively, to inspire cooperation across partisan lines, and to balance immediate relief with long-term planning. Challenges arose not only from the economic crisis, but also from political opponents and public scrutiny. The press was vigilant, the electorate critical, and fellow politicians often skeptical. I quickly grasped that leadership required resilience, not just in policy formulation, but in public perception. Every decision could be dissected, every initiative questioned, and every misstep magnified. Yet, adversity became a catalyst for innovation, driving me to think creatively, act decisively, and embrace responsibility with courage. Eleanor's partnership during these years proved invaluable. Her advocacy for social programs, her visits to hospitals, settlements, and orphanages, and her relentless attention to human stories reminded me constantly that the heart of governance is the people. She bridged the gap between policy and lived experience, ensuring that legislation remained grounded in reality. Her insight reinforced my conviction that leadership is inseparable from empathy. As governor, I initiated programs that addressed the immediate needs of citizens while laying the groundwork for systemic change. Relief programs for the unemployed, modernization of state administration, and infrastructure projects were not merely temporary fixes. They were strategic steps toward a more resilient society. I learned the complexity of prioritization, which initiatives to pursue first, which to delay, and which to innovate in order to maximize impact. It was during this period that my national ambitions began to crystallize. I observed that the crises facing New York mirrored those of the nation. The inadequacies of federal responses, the need for coordinated policy, and the urgency of decisive leadership became clear. The experiences, lessons, and successes as governor convinced me that I could, and should, serve on a larger stage. Yet ambition alone was insufficient. Credibility, experience, and demonstrable results were essential prerequisites. WWII 1932. As the presidential election loomed, I was both cautious and determined. The challenge was daunting. The country faced unprecedented economic collapse, skepticism of government intervention ran deep, and the opposition was formidable. But I had witnessed firsthand the consequences of inaction, the pain of helplessness, and the transformative potential of well-directed leadership. I resolved that, if entrusted with greater responsibility, I would act decisively, guided by principle, pragmatism, and an unwavering commitment to the welfare of the American people. Looking back on my governorship, I see it as a crucible in which policy, leadership, and character were tested simultaneously. I confronted not only economic and political challenges, but also the human dimension of crisis, fear, hope, anger, and resilience. Each initiative, each decision, each interaction shaped my understanding of governance and prepared me for the presidency that lay ahead. The transition from governor to presidential candidate was both exhilarating and fraught with tension. I had to project competence while inspiring hope, to demonstrate results while communicating vision, and to build alliances while navigating the treacherous currents of national politics. These were the moments that defined my readiness to lead a nation facing existential challenges. In reflection, my years as governor taught me that leadership is inseparable from responsibility, empathy, and action. It is forged in the crucible of crisis, honed through decision-making under pressure, and validated by tangible improvements in the lives of those one serves. These lessons, learned in the difficult and dynamic environment of New York, became the foundation upon which my presidency and the monumental decisions that awaited would rest. The presidential election of 1932 was unlike any campaign I had ever experienced. The nation teetered on the edge of economic collapse. Breadlines stretched across cities, banks were failing, and despair was etched on the faces of millions. Every speech, every rally, every interaction with citizens reminded me that this was not merely a contest for political office. It was a fight for the soul of the nation. I entered the race with both determination and a profound sense of responsibility. I knew that promises must be backed by concrete plans, and that leadership required more than words. It required vision, courage, and the ability to inspire hope where there was despair. Public confidence had been shattered, and the American people longed for a sense of direction, for a belief that government could act decisively on their behalf. The campaign trail was grueling. I traveled tirelessly across states, listening to the stories of struggling families, farmers, and workers. I felt their frustrations, fears, and hopelessness firsthand. Each conversation strengthened my conviction that leadership must be grounded in empathy, informed by reality, and guided by the principle that government exists to serve its citizens. My speeches were not mere rhetoric. They were a call to action, a promise that relief, recovery, and reform would follow. The opposition was formidable. President Hoover, despite his efforts, was widely criticized for his handling of the economic crisis. Republicans painted me as inexperienced, untested, and overly ambitious. Yet, I remained focused, presenting detailed plans to stimulate economic growth, provide relief to the unemployed, and reform the financial system. I emphasized that recovery would require bold action, unprecedented programs, and collaboration between federal and state authorities. Winning the election was only the beginning. As I prepared to assume office, I faced the immediate reality of a nation in crisis. The Great Depression had deepened, unemployment was soaring, banks were collapsing, and the social fabric was fraying. The weight of the presidency settled upon me. Every decision mattered. Every delay risked further suffering. I realized that the office I assumed demanded more than administration. It required leadership capable of restoring faith in government, society, and the future. The transition period was filled with urgency. I met with advisors, economists, and state leaders, seeking to understand the depth and scope of the crisis. Reports of failing banks, destitute families, and economic paralysis confronted me daily. I studied policies from previous administrations, analyzed their successes and failures, and considered innovative approaches. I knew that cautious incremental measures would not suffice. The scale of the disaster demanded bold, decisive action. As Inauguration Day approached, I reflected on the immense responsibility I was about to shoulder. The nation's eyes were upon me, expecting solutions, leadership, and hope. I carried with me the lessons of my youth, my early political career, and my governorship: empathy, persistence, strategic thinking, and moral conviction. These were the tools I would rely upon to navigate the treacherous waters ahead. The inaugural address was more than ceremony. It was a declaration of purpose. I pledged to confront the crisis head-on, to act with urgency, and to restore both economic stability and public confidence. I emphasized that the challenges were immense, yet not insurmountable, and that the government would work tirelessly to alleviate suffering, restore opportunity, and rebuild trust. Every word was chosen with care, every sentence meant to convey resolve, reassurance, and leadership. The early days in office were immediately challenging. Banks were failing, state relief systems were overwhelmed, and public fear was pervasive. I coordinated emergency measures, established new agencies, and sought to ensure that federal intervention provided tangible relief while laying the foundation for longer-term recovery. The stakes were enormous. Miscalculations could deepen the crisis, erode confidence, and jeopardize the nation's stability. Yet, even in the midst of immense pressure, I remained committed to principle. Every action was measured against the values I had cultivated throughout my life: integrity, empathy, pragmatism, and service to the public good. The challenges were personal as well as political. Long hours, intense scrutiny, and the constant pressure of knowing that lives hung in the balance tested every ounce of endurance and judgment I possessed. These early months solidified a central truth for me: leadership is inseparable from action under pressure. Words alone do not inspire confidence. Policies alone do not heal despair. It is the combination of vision, decisiveness, empathy, and courage that shapes outcomes. I understood that the presidency demanded not just management, but moral leadership, the ability to guide a nation through darkness with both competence and conscience. Looking back on these formative weeks, I see a period of intense learning, adaptation, and resolve. The election had been won, but the real test had only begun. The challenges of economic collapse, public despair, and institutional inertia demanded every skill I possessed, every lesson I had learned, and every ounce of moral and political courage I could summon. It was in these early days that the trajectory of my presidency and the fate of the nation would be determined. Upon taking office, the enormity of the economic crisis became starkly clear. Banks were closing at an alarming rate, industrial output had plummeted, and millions of Americans were unemployed, hungry, and anxious about the future. The sense of urgency was immediate. I knew that any delay could deepen the despair and prolong recovery. My first act was to address the banking crisis. I declared a national bank holiday to halt further closures, restore public confidence, and allow federal authorities to assess the stability of financial institutions. It was a bold, unprecedented measure, and I understood that its success depended on both decisive action and effective communication. The American people needed reassurance. They needed to trust that the government was capable of protecting their savings and stabilizing the economy. Working alongside advisors, economists, and Treasury officials, I crafted policies to reopen banks under federal supervision. Each step was deliberate, yet urgent, because hesitation would exacerbate panic. I witnessed firsthand the fear etched into the faces of depositors, the anxiety of bankers, and the weight of responsibility upon every decision. The stakes were immense. Failure could mean the collapse of the entire financial system, while success could restore confidence and pave the way for broader recovery. Simultaneously, I pursued relief and recovery measures to address widespread unemployment and economic stagnation. Emergency programs were established to provide jobs, fund public works, and stimulate demand. Roads, bridges, schools, and infrastructure projects became not just practical improvements, but symbols of hope and renewal. Americans who had felt powerless began to see tangible evidence that government could act decisively in their interest. The challenges were manifold. Congress was cautious and often skeptical. Political opponents criticized interventionist policies, and bureaucratic machinery moved slowly. Every initiative required negotiation, persuasion, and a careful balance between urgency and legislative process. I learned that leadership involves both decisiveness and patience, vision and tact. Success depended not solely on policy design, but on the ability to implement effectively and maintain public trust. Eleanor's engagement remained invaluable. She visited communities affected by unemployment and poverty, documenting stories and advocating for targeted assistance. Her work ensured that relief efforts were grounded in reality, addressing the needs of those most affected. Her perspective reminded me constantly that effective governance is rooted in human experience, not just abstract policy. Through these early New Deal programs, I began to understand the full scope of federal responsibility. Government could no longer remain a distant observer. It had to intervene actively to prevent widespread suffering and to stabilize the economic foundation of the nation. These measures, though initially temporary, were the first steps in redefining the role of government in American life. Yet every success carried risk. Bold action invited scrutiny, criticism, and political opposition. I faced doubts from those who feared government overreach, challenges from entrenched interests, and pressure from the public for immediate results. I learned that leadership in crisis is not measured by ease or popularity, but by the courage to act in the face of uncertainty and resistance. Throughout these early months, I was also learning the importance of communication. Fireside chats and public addresses became tools not just for information, but for inspiration. I sought to explain policy decisions, calm fears, and instill confidence. Words, when combined with action, could reassure a frightened populace and galvanize collective effort toward recovery. Reflecting on this period, I see it as a crucible of leadership. The banking crisis, unemployment, and economic collapse tested every principle I had learned as a politician, a governor, and a public servant. I understood that leadership required a balance of empathy, decisiveness, strategy, and moral courage. Each day presented new challenges, and each decision carried profound consequences. The early New Deal initiatives laid the groundwork for broader reforms to come. They demonstrated that decisive federal action could stabilize the economy, provide relief to those in need, and restore hope. More importantly, they shaped my understanding of what leadership truly entails: the ability to confront crisis head-on, to make difficult choices, and to inspire confidence in the American people that recovery, though arduous, was possible. These months confirmed a core principle: effective governance requires both vision and action. The challenges of the moment demanded bold measures, but every measure had to reflect compassion, pragmatism, and a deep commitment to the welfare of the nation. It was here, in the crucible of the Great Depression, that the foundation of the New Deal was forged and the character of my presidency was defined. With the initial New Deal measures underway, it became clear that immediate relief was only the beginning. The nation required structural reforms to prevent future collapse, revive industry, and restore confidence in the American economy. I understood that superficial fixes would not suffice. The challenges demanded bold, systemic action. One of my earliest priorities was to expand public works programs. Beyond providing immediate employment, these initiatives were designed to modernize the nation's infrastructure, stimulate industrial growth, and instill a sense of purpose and dignity among workers. Schools, hospitals, bridges, and roads were rebuilt or constructed anew. each project a tangible sign of hope in communities long abandoned by prosperity. The scale was unprecedented, and the logistical challenges immense, but necessity demanded both ambition and precision. Simultaneously, we tackled financial reforms to stabilize banking, restore credit, and regulate the stock market. Lessons from the collapse of 1929 were harsh but invaluable. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, and Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, became cornerstones of this effort, designed to protect citizens, restore public trust, and prevent abuses that had contributed to the crisis. Every regulation, every reform, was scrutinized, debated, and refined. The consequences of misstep could reverberate nationwide. Labor rights also demanded urgent attention. Millions of Americans endured grueling hours, unsafe conditions, and minimal pay. We championed legislation to establish fair labor standards, protect the right to organize, and empower workers to negotiate with employers. These efforts sparked opposition from entrenched business interests, yet they were essential to restore balance and dignity to the workforce. I often reminded myself that progress is never without resistance. Meaningful change always provokes tension between old power and emerging justice. Agricultural recovery was another cornerstone. Farmers had suffered catastrophic losses, crops rotted in fields, and rural communities teetered on the brink. Programs such as the Agricultural Adjustment Act sought to stabilize prices, reduce surplus, and support farm incomes. These measures were controversial, yet necessary to prevent further collapse of a vital sector and the communities it sustained. Communication remained critical. Fireside chats and public addresses were more than tools. They were lifelines connecting the federal government to the people. I spoke directly to citizens, explaining policies, calming anxieties, and articulating a vision of recovery. Words, paired with tangible action, helped rebuild faith in government and reminded Americans that they were not abandoned in their struggle. Throughout this period, political opposition intensified. Critics decried the expansion of federal power, warned of deficit spending, and questioned the long-term implications of these reforms. Yet I remained resolute. Leadership in crisis requires courage, not just to act, but to defend action, to educate the public, and to pursue what is necessary despite resistance. Every decision was a test of principle, strategy, and moral judgment. Eleanor's tireless engagement continued to influence policy and priorities. Her advocacy for children, women, and marginalized communities ensured that recovery was not only economic but socially conscious. She reminded me that the nation's progress must encompass the most vulnerable, and that empathy is not a weakness but a guiding principle for effective governance. By mid-1933, the early New Deal had begun to demonstrate results. Banks were stabilized, unemployment relief reached millions, and industrial activity showed tentative signs of revival. Yet, recovery was neither uniform nor guaranteed. Each day required vigilance, adaptation, and continued commitment to policies grounded in both pragmatism and principle. Looking back on these months, I recognize the deep lessons embedded in the process. Leadership in times of crisis demands a synthesis of vision, courage, empathy, and strategic action. Relief programs without structural reforms are temporary. Reforms without public trust are hollow. True leadership requires addressing both immediate suffering and the systemic vulnerabilities that permit it. The deepening of the New Deal marked a defining period of my presidency. It was a time of relentless action, moral reckoning, and creative governance. The nation's recovery would not be easy, yet each step taken laid the foundation for a more resilient, equitable, and hopeful America. It was here, in these months of intense effort and profound challenge, that the character of the New Deal and the enduring principles of my leadership were forged. By the time I had navigated the initial turbulence of my presidency, it was clear that the early New Deal measures, though necessary, were only the beginning. Relief and immediate stabilization were essential, but long-term recovery required structural reforms across industry, agriculture, finance, and society itself. I understood that the nation demanded bold vision, coordinated action, and relentless persistence. That we expanded public works programs dramatically. Employment was critical not only for economic reasons, but to restore dignity and purpose to millions of Americans. Bridges, roads, schools, and hospitals rose across the country, each project a tangible symbol of progress and hope. These initiatives demanded meticulous planning, coordination, and oversight, but the rewards were immediate and profound. Families who had known despair for years saw work, wages, and a renewed sense of purpose. Simultaneously, we tackled systemic financial reform. The lessons of 1929 were still fresh and painful. I pushed for regulation of banking, investment practices, and corporate finance to prevent future crises. Agencies like the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, and Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, became pillars of accountability and protection, ensuring that Americans could place trust in their institutions once more. Every rule, every reform, was scrutinized for both efficacy and fairness, as missteps could have severe national consequences. Labor reforms advanced as well. Millions of workers endured long hours, unsafe conditions, and inadequate pay. The National Industrial Recovery Act, the Fair Labor Standards Act, and other initiatives were designed to provide protections, recognize collective bargaining rights, and restore a measure of fairness to workplaces. This drew sharp criticism from entrenched business interests, yet these steps were morally and politically necessary to balance the scales and ensure equitable participation in recovery. Agricultural programs were refined and expanded. Farmers, whose livelihoods had been devastated, were offered price supports, subsidies, and assistance with crop planning. Rural electrification projects were launched to modernize farming communities and improve quality of life. These programs were vital not only economically, but socially, to stabilize rural America and prevent mass migration to already overburdened cities. Education and social welfare emerged as central components of national recovery. Funding for schools, libraries, and community centers sought to empower citizens and cultivate opportunities for future generations. Social Security, though controversial, was conceived as a safeguard against poverty in old age and a stabilizer for the broader economy. I understood that these programs would provoke political debate, yet they were essential to laying the foundation of a just and resilient society. The political climate remained charged. Opposition labeled the New Deal as overreach, radical, or fiscally irresponsible. Newspapers, business leaders, and political rivals questioned the pace, scale, and cost of our reforms. Yet I believe that leadership in crisis demanded courage to act decisively, to explain actions clearly, and to defend measures grounded in principle. The stakes were nothing less than the nation's survival and future prosperity. Eleanor's engagement continued to illuminate the human dimension of governance. She visited the communities most affected by hardship, listened to the voices often ignored, and advocated for policies that addressed the needs of women, children, and the disadvantaged. Her perspective reminded me constantly that recovery is not merely economic. It must be social, humane, and inclusive. Communication with the public became an instrument of governance, as well as reassurance. Fireside chats were employed not just to explain policy, but to instill confidence, calm fear, and convey the determination of leadership. I spoke directly to citizens about the challenges and the rationale for our actions, seeking to inspire trust and collective effort. These months reinforced a central truth. Recovery is both immediate and systemic. Quick relief eases suffering, but sustainable reform ensures enduring stability. Leadership requires balancing urgency with prudence, empathy with practicality, and moral vision with strategic execution. Looking back, this period of my presidency was both exhausting and invigorating. We were transforming the nation's economic and social landscape, confronting entrenched interests, and pioneering programs that would become the backbone of modern American governance. The New Deal was no longer experimental. It was a statement of principle, a blueprint for hope, and a promise that government could act decisively in the interest of all citizens. The expansion of the New Deal during these months laid the foundation for future initiatives that would deepen social reform, enhance economic security, and rebuild national confidence. I knew that the road ahead would be long and fraught with opposition, yet each measure taken reinforced my conviction. America could endure, adapt, and emerge stronger. Leadership demanded boldness, empathy, and vision, and this was the period in which those qualities were tested and refined to their fullest extent. As the early months of the New Deal unfolded, it became increasingly clear that temporary relief, while critical, could not alone secure the nation's future. Americans needed a system that would protect them from the recurring cycles of economic collapse, ensure social welfare, and lay the foundations for a more resilient economy. I knew that we were embarking on bold, unprecedented reforms that would reshape the very fabric of American society. We intensified public works and employment programs. Beyond creating jobs, these initiatives sought to modernize the nation's infrastructure on a massive scale. Highways, dams, schools, hospitals, and public buildings sprang to life across the country. Each project represented not just employment, but hope, stability, and renewed civic pride. Every mile of road, every bridge, every school built was a symbol that the federal government was actively restoring confidence in communities long abandoned by prosperity. Financial reform continued with equal urgency. I reinforced banking regulations, monitored credit availability, and ensured federal oversight of investment practices. The lessons from 1929 were unforgiving, and I was determined that no American would again face such unmitigated loss of savings or trust in the institutions meant to protect them. The FDIC and SEC were strengthened, and new mechanisms for accountability were introduced to maintain the integrity of the financial system. Each decision was weighed carefully, because a misstep could undermine the nation's fragile recovery. Labor policy deepened, extending protections to more workers and industries. Minimum wage laws, limits on work hours, and the right to unionize became central to our efforts to promote fairness and stability. Opposition from business interests was fierce, yet I understood that equitable labor practices were essential to a lasting recovery. Justice in the workplace was not optional. It was foundational to rebuilding the economy and society alike. Agricultural reform expanded, addressing overproduction, price instability, and rural poverty. Programs aimed to stabilize farm incomes, provide technical assistance, and bring electricity and modernization to rural areas. These measures were not merely economic. They strengthened the social fabric of rural America, ensuring that families could sustain themselves, educate their children, and maintain community stability. Social security legislation emerged as a pivotal development. The concept faced fierce political and public debate, yet it was essential to establish a safety net for the elderly, unemployed, and vulnerable. Social welfare was no longer a charity. It became a right and a cornerstone of national stability. I often reminded myself that policy must balance moral responsibility with practical governance to protect those in need while fostering confidence in the nation's future. Education and cultural initiatives were also expanded. Federal support for schools, libraries, and arts programs aimed to cultivate knowledge, creativity, and civic engagement. Recovery was not merely a question of dollars and cents. It was a question of opportunity, empowerment, and the cultivation of a society capable of sustained growth and democratic participation. The political climate was increasingly polarized. Critics accused the New Deal of overreach, fiscal irresponsibility, and even radical experimentation. Some labeled our reforms as socialist or authoritarian, and newspapers and political leaders debated the scope of federal power. Yet, I was unwavering. Leadership in crisis requires decisiveness, courage, and the willingness to defend policies grounded in principle and long-term vision. To act timidly or delay out of fear would have been a betrayal to those suffering in the depths of the Depression. Eleanor's influence continued to guide our priorities. She tirelessly advocated for women, children, and the marginalized, ensuring that recovery policies were not merely economic but also socially conscious. Her perspective reminded me that true leadership must integrate empathy with action, that the government's role is to serve all citizens fairly, and that social justice is inseparable from economic recovery. Communication remained essential. Fireside chats, public addresses, and direct engagement with the press and the public helped explain the purpose and necessity of reforms. Americans needed to understand that recovery required sustained effort, and that the government was committed to both immediate relief and long-term stability. Words and deeds together reinforced confidence, fostered trust, and mobilized collective determination. By mid-1934, the deepening New Deal was showing tangible results. Employment programs were restoring jobs and wages. Financial reforms were stabilizing the banking sector. Social welfare initiatives were beginning to protect the vulnerable. And agricultural and labor policies were fostering equitable growth. Yet, the road to recovery was far from complete. Each success revealed new challenges, requiring ongoing vigilance, adaptation, and a relentless commitment to both principle and practicality. Reflecting on these months, I understood that leadership in the midst of crisis is multifaceted. Immediate action must coexist with long-term planning. Relief must be paired with reform. Courage must be guided by strategy. And empathy must inform every policy decision. These were not theoretical concepts. They were daily imperatives, tested against the harsh realities of suffering, economic collapse, and political opposition. The deepening of the New Deal in this period established a blueprint for governance during crisis. Bold initiatives grounded in principle, a commitment to social and economic justice, and the unwavering pursuit of a nation's recovery. I knew that the work was far from finished, yet these months solidified the core of my administration's mission: to restore hope, rebuild confidence, and ensure that America could emerge from its darkest days stronger, fairer, and more resilient than ever before. As the nation slowly emerged from the darkest days of the Depression, I recognized that the New Deal had entered a critical new phase. Initial relief and stabilization had been essential, but the work of structural reform and long-term recovery required not only continued action, but careful navigation of political, social, and economic tensions. Every policy, every initiative would now be measured not just by immediate impact, but by its endurance and fairness. Public reaction to the New Deal was increasingly vocal and diverse. Millions of Americans saw hope and opportunity in our programs, yet criticism and skepticism also surged. Newspapers debated the cost, political opponents decried federal overreach, and entrenched interests resisted changes that threatened their privileges. I understood that leadership in this context demanded clarity, patience, and unwavering commitment. We could not simply retreat from progress out of fear of controversy. Employment programs continued to expand, but we faced new logistical and bureaucratic challenges. Administering relief on a national scale required coordination across federal, state, and local agencies. Mistakes and inefficiencies were inevitable, yet each obstacle offered lessons for improvement. Every bridge built, every school constructed, every worker employed reinforced our central principle: government could act decisively to restore both livelihood and dignity. Financial systems stabilized further under strengthened regulations, but not without opposition. Banking reforms, credit controls, and investment oversight drew criticism from those who feared restrictions on profit. Yet the memory of 1929 remained a cautionary tale, and I was determined that Americans should not again suffer catastrophic loss due to unregulated speculation or corporate malfeasance. Our goal was stability, security, and trust. Labor relations became a central arena of both progress and tension. Workers gained unprecedented rights to organize and bargain collectively, while employers navigated a rapidly evolving regulatory environment. Strikes and disputes occasionally erupted, highlighting the difficult balance between protecting workers' rights and maintaining industrial productivity. I remained firm. Fairness and justice in the workplace were non-negotiable, and long-term prosperity required equitable treatment for all citizens. Agricultural programs matured, addressing persistent overproduction and rural hardship. Farm subsidies, technical assistance, and electrification efforts continued, bringing tangible improvement to rural communities. These measures were sometimes criticized as excessive government intervention, yet their social and economic impact was undeniable. Families regained stability, education improved, and rural communities gained the infrastructure necessary to thrive. Social welfare initiatives, including the early foundations of Social Security, provoked debate, yet I was convinced of their necessity. Protection against old age poverty, unemployment, and vulnerability was not only moral, but vital to sustained economic stability. Ensuring a basic safety net for citizens was a responsibility of government, and I defended these programs with both principle and pragmatism. The political climate intensified as the mid-1930s approached. Critics labeled our actions as radical, inefficient, or even unconstitutional. Some threatened legal challenges, while others mobilized public opinion against further reform. I knew that decisive leadership required not only policy expertise, but also the ability to communicate vision, reassure citizens, and confront opposition without retreating from core objectives. Eleanor's engagement remained a guiding force. She visited communities, spoke with women, children, and the marginalized, and influenced policy to ensure that recovery efforts addressed both economic and human needs. Her work reinforced a crucial lesson. Governance is not abstract. It is deeply personal, and success requires empathy, insight, and moral courage. Communication with the public remained central to our strategy. Fireside chats, public addresses, and direct engagement with local media allowed me to explain our policies, provide context for complex reforms, and build confidence among citizens. Trust, once lost during the Depression, had to be painstakingly rebuilt through transparency, consistent action, and honest dialogue. By the midpoint of the New Deal, it was clear that our policies were reshaping the nation. Employment programs were restoring livelihoods, financial reforms were stabilizing markets, labor protections were promoting fairness, rural communities were modernizing, and social welfare was beginning to safeguard vulnerable populations. Yet the journey was far from complete. Each step forward revealed new challenges, requiring continued vigilance, adaptation, and an unshakable commitment to principle. This period taught me that leadership in times of crisis is a delicate blend of action, foresight, and moral clarity. Relief must be immediate, reform must be structural, and communication must bridge the gap between government and citizens. These months reinforced my belief that the nation's recovery depended not only on economic measures, but on trust, fairness, and the vision of a government capable of acting decisively for the common good. As the New Deal progressed into its middle phase, the nation's attention turned sharply to its broader implications. While many Americans welcomed the programs, seeing hope in the continued relief, jobs, and reforms, opposition also grew in intensity. Political rivals, business leaders, and even some judges challenged the scope and constitutionality of the reforms. I knew that leadership demanded both steadfast resolve and the ability to articulate the moral and practical necessity of our actions. Financial reform remained a cornerstone of stability. Banking oversight, investment regulation, and credit controls were essential to prevent another catastrophic collapse. Critics argued that regulations stifled growth or infringed on freedom, yet the memory of 1929 was unforgiving. I was determined that Americans should never again witness the devastation of uncontrolled speculation or systemic failure. Every policy decision had to safeguard both immediate recovery and long-term economic resilience. Labor and industry were arenas of both progress and conflict. Workers pressed for fair wages, safer conditions, and collective bargaining rights, while some industrialists resisted, claiming government overreach. Strikes, protests, and disputes occasionally erupted, highlighting the delicate balance between social justice and industrial productivity. I remained resolute. Lasting prosperity depended on fairness and dignity for every worker. Agricultural and rural programs continued to expand. Price supports, modernization efforts, and rural electrification projects were essential to stabilize farming communities and restore livelihoods. Detractors criticized government intervention as excessive, yet these measures directly improved lives and strengthened the nation's social fabric. Stability in the countryside was vital for both economic and social recovery. Social welfare initiatives, including Social Security and public health measures, faced significant political and public debate. Some claimed that these programs expanded government too far, threatened individual initiative, or imposed unsustainable costs. Yet I was convinced that protecting vulnerable populations was both a moral duty and a strategic imperative. A nation that ignored the needs of its citizens would never achieve enduring recovery or prosperity. Communication became more critical than ever. Fireside chats, public addresses, and direct media engagement allowed me to explain policies, respond to criticism, and build trust. Americans needed assurance that our actions were deliberate, lawful, and guided by principle. In times of uncertainty, transparency and explanation were as important as legislation. Judicial challenges tested the New Deal's limits. Some programs faced court scrutiny, and rulings occasionally struck down key initiatives. Each decision required careful legal and political navigation, balancing respect for the Constitution with the urgent needs of the people. I understood that every setback was a lesson, every criticism an opportunity to clarify the purpose and necessity of reform. Eleanor's advocacy continued to illuminate the human consequences of policy. Her work with communities, particularly women, children, and marginalized populations, reinforced the essential lesson that recovery was not solely an economic endeavor. Social justice, human dignity, and inclusivity had to guide every action of government. By mid-1935, it was clear that the New Deal was reshaping the nation. Economic stabilization, job creation, financial oversight, labor protections, and social welfare measures were producing tangible results. Yet the path forward was fraught with political, legal, and social challenges. Opposition would remain vocal, and implementation would demand vigilance, adaptability, and unwavering commitment to principle. These months reinforced my understanding of leadership during crisis. Decisive action must coexist with careful strategy. Empathy must inform policy, and courage must be balanced by prudent execution. The New Deal's mid-phase was a crucible in which the government's capacity to act decisively, fairly, and effectively for the common good was tested as never before. In reflecting upon these months, I recognized a central truth. Recovery is multifaceted, requiring economic measures, social reform, and moral courage. Leadership demands a vision that encompasses both immediate relief and long-term structural change. Only through steadfast action, principled governance, and public engagement could the nation emerge stronger, fairer, and more resilient from its trials. As the New Deal matured, I could see that our policies were shaping not only the economy, but also the very expectations of American society. Relief, reform, and recovery had established a new standard that government could, and must, act decisively in times of crisis to protect citizens, stabilize institutions, and promote justice. Yet, the path was far from smooth. Opposition grew louder, and the tension between progress and resistance defined the political landscape. Employment and public works programs continued to expand, with projects now reaching deeper into local communities and addressing long-term infrastructure needs. Roads, bridges, schools, hospitals, and public facilities became tangible symbols of national recovery. Each project served not only as a source of income, but as a message that government could restore confidence, dignity, and opportunity even in the harshest times. Financial and banking reforms reached their culmination. Oversight mechanisms, deposit insurance, and investment regulations became integral to preventing systemic collapse. Critics continued to decry government intervention, claiming it constrained markets. Yet I knew that without robust safeguards, the nation would remain vulnerable to repeated financial disasters. Our measures sought to balance freedom with responsibility, opportunity with protection. Labor policies evolved further. Workers gained the right to unionize and negotiate wages, while protections for working hours, safety, and equitable treatment expanded. Resistance from industrial leaders sometimes flared, creating conflict and legal battles. I remained firm. A fair and just labor system was foundational to long-term prosperity and social stability. Agricultural programs reached more rural families, providing income stabilization, modernization, and infrastructure. Electrification, soil conservation, and technical assistance brought tangible improvement to isolated communities. Despite some criticisms of government overreach, the benefits were clear. Rural citizens could sustain livelihoods, educate children, and participate fully in national life. Social welfare policies solidified, including Social Security and public health initiatives. These programs faced continuing scrutiny, yet their impact on the most vulnerable Americans was undeniable. Providing a safety net was not optional, it was a moral and practical necessity. I defended these measures with both principle and pragmatism, aware that long-term public confidence depended on them. Political resistance intensified. Opposition parties, business groups, and some media outlets attacked our initiatives as radical or unsustainable. Court challenges arose, and public debate was heated. Yet leadership in crisis demanded resilience, clarity, and a willingness to stand by reforms that were in the nation's best interest. I knew that retreat would signal weakness, while steadfast action reinforced public trust. and institutional stability, Eleanor's engagement continued to shape policy and public perception. Her advocacy for women, children, and marginalized groups ensured that the New Deal addressed both economic and social dimensions of recovery. Her work reminded me that governance must integrate compassion with decisive action. Communication remained a vital tool. Fireside chats, public addresses, and direct engagement with citizens helped explain the rationale behind complex programs. Transparency, consistency, and honesty were essential to sustaining public trust and confidence. Americans needed assurance that the government was acting fairly, lawfully, and with purpose. By the late New Deal, the nation was transformed. Employment and infrastructure programs had revitalized communities, financial reforms had stabilized markets, labor and agricultural policies had improved fairness and productivity, and social welfare initiatives had provided protection for the most vulnerable. Yet the work of recovery and reform was ongoing, demanding continued vigilance, adaptation, and leadership grounded in principle. These months confirmed my belief that leadership in crisis requires a blend of courage, empathy, strategic thinking, and moral clarity. Recovery is not merely economic, it is social, legal, and ethical. Only through decisive, principled action, effective communication, and sustained public engagement could the nation emerge stronger, fairer, and more resilient than ever before. Reflecting on the late New Deal, I understood that the true measure of governance is the ability to enact lasting reform while preserving public trust, fostering social justice, and securing economic stability. The lessons learned during these months would guide future generations, proving that even in the darkest times, principled leadership can forge hope, opportunity, and a better future for all Americans. As the New Deal entered its later stages, I realized that the nation's recovery was now intertwined with increasingly complex domestic and international challenges. The economy was stabilizing, yet millions still struggled to rebuild their lives. Our programs had begun to reshape expectations. Citizens now looked to the government for more than relief. They sought guidance, fairness, and long-term security. Employment and public works initiatives had matured into significant infrastructure projects. Highways, bridges, schools, hospitals, and community facilities now dotted the landscape, providing both jobs and a sense of purpose. Each completed project symbolized hope and tangible progress, demonstrating that government could be a force for constructive change, even amid opposition and doubt. Political pressures intensified. Critics accused the New Deal of overreach, inefficiency, and even radicalism. Some challenged the constitutionality of programs, while opponents in Congress sought to limit funding and influence public opinion against our reforms. I understood that leadership in such a climate required steadfast resolve, careful diplomacy, and the courage to maintain course in the face of relentless scrutiny. Financial and labor reforms continued to evolve. Banking regulations, deposit insurance, and stock market oversight provided security for the economy, while labor protections, collective bargaining rights, and fair wage initiatives strengthened industrial relations. Yet both arenas remained contested, with strikes, court challenges, and political resistance testing the durability of progress. Agricultural policies deepened, offering support to farmers facing fluctuating markets and challenging environmental conditions. Electrification, soil conservation, and modernization programs expanded, improving productivity and quality of life in rural areas. These measures, while criticized by some as government intrusion, were crucial for long-term national stability. Social welfare programs, particularly Social Security and health initiatives, became increasingly essential. Protecting the elderly, unemployed, and vulnerable populations was no longer optional. It was a moral and practical imperative. Public debate continued, but the necessity of these programs for social cohesion and economic resilience was undeniable. International concerns began to cast a shadow over domestic priorities. Rising tensions abroad, shifting alliances, and early signs of global conflict required careful attention. I knew that while the nation needed to focus on recovery, we could not ignore the external forces that would inevitably shape our future. Balancing domestic reform with emerging international responsibilities became a delicate task, demanding foresight, prudence, and strategic communication. Eleanor's advocacy remained a central influence. Her engagement with women, children, and marginalized communities ensured that policy decisions reflected human needs as well as economic goals. Her efforts reminded me that governance is both a practical and deeply moral endeavor. Communication continued to be crucial. Fireside chats, public speeches, and direct engagement with citizens allowed me to explain policy rationale, address criticism, and foster trust. In times of uncertainty, transparency, consistency, and empathy were as important as legislation itself. By the late New Deal, it was evident that the nation had undergone profound transformation. Employment programs, infrastructure development, financial stability, labor protections, agricultural support, and social welfare measures had collectively restored hope and confidence. Yet the challenges ahead, political opposition, legal scrutiny, social expectations, and emerging global threats, demanded continued vigilance, principled leadership, and adaptability. These months reinforced the enduring lesson that governance requires a blend of courage, vision, empathy, and moral clarity. Recovery is multifaceted, encompassing economic, social, and ethical dimensions. Only through decisive action, sustained communication, and unwavering commitment to public welfare could the nation navigate uncertainty and emerge stronger, fairer, and more resilient than ever before. Asterisk. As the late New Deal unfolded, I realized the complexity of balancing recovery with rising domestic and international pressures. The American people expected more than emergency relief. They wanted stability, fairness, and a government that could navigate both crises and opportunities. Employment and infrastructure initiatives now reached even the most remote communities. Roads, bridges, schools, hospitals, and public facilities symbolized the tangible results of government action, but they also drew criticism from those who claimed we were overextending authority or spending excessively. Each completed project was a victory for public morale and a demonstration that constructive governance could produce real progress. Financial oversight and labor protections continued to evolve. Banking regulation, stock market oversight, and insurance mechanisms reduced systemic risk, while workers gained stronger rights, safer conditions, and fairer wages. These reforms faced ongoing legal and political challenges, yet I remained determined to uphold them, knowing the long-term stability of the nation depended on principled action. Agricultural programs deepened their impact, stabilizing markets, modernizing operations, and improving rural infrastructure. Despite some accusations of overreach, these initiatives provided farmers with security, enabling them to invest in their communities and maintain livelihoods in difficult times. Rural stability was central to both economic recovery and social cohesion. Social welfare measures became a cornerstone of national policy. Social security, unemployment assistance, public health initiatives, and other programs extended a safety net to those most vulnerable. Critics argued that government intervention was too expansive, yet I knew that a society that ignores its weakest members cannot endure. Protecting citizens was both a moral duty and a strategic necessity for long-term prosperity. Political opposition intensified. Business leaders, opposition parties, and parts of the media criticized New Deal policies as radical, costly, or unconstitutional. Court challenges and legislative resistance required careful navigation. I understood that leadership meant standing firm, articulating the rationale for our actions, and demonstrating that these policies were necessary for the public good. Emerging global threats added urgency to decision-making. Economic instability abroad, shifting alliances, and signs of rising conflicts in Europe and Asia demanded foresight. While the nation focused on recovery, I knew we could not ignore the international forces that would inevitably affect our security and prosperity. Strategic planning and communication were essential to ensure the nation was prepared for both domestic and foreign challenges. Eleanor's continued advocacy reinforced the human dimension of policy. Her engagement with women, children, and marginalized communities ensured that our programs were not solely economic, but also socially just. Her work reminded me that government must address both practical needs and ethical responsibilities. Communication remained crucial. Fireside chats, public addresses, and direct dialogue with citizens explained policy decisions, addressed skepticism, and reinforced trust. Transparency and consistency helped citizens understand not only what we were doing, but why it was necessary. By the late New Deal, The nation had made substantial progress, yet the challenges were far from over. Employment and infrastructure programs revitalized communities, financial reforms stabilized markets, labor and agricultural policies advanced fairness, and social welfare initiatives protected the vulnerable. Political opposition, legal scrutiny, public expectations, and the looming shadow of international conflict demanded constant vigilance and principled leadership. These months reaffirmed my belief that effective governance requires courage, vision, empathy, and moral clarity. Recovery is multifaceted, encompassing economic, social, and ethical responsibilities. Only through decisive action, sustained communication, and unwavering dedication to the public welfare could the nation face uncertainty and emerge stronger, fairer, and more resilient than ever before. As the late New Deal reached its full scope, I reflected on the breadth and impact of our efforts. Recovery had taken root in the economy, communities, and social institutions, yet challenges persisted. Critics still questioned the pace, cost, and scope of reforms, while emerging global tensions signaled that America could not remain isolated from the shifting international landscape. Infrastructure projects now connected communities across the nation. Highways, bridges, schools, hospitals, and public facilities served as tangible proof of government action. Each project represented jobs, progress, and hope, yet they also faced scrutiny from those who claimed we were overreaching or misallocating resources. I understood that visible success would always invite criticism, and I was prepared to defend both the purpose and necessity of our initiatives. Financial reforms and labor protections had strengthened the nation's foundations. Banks were stabilized, investment risks mitigated, and workers' rights expanded. Strikes, court challenges, and political opposition tested our resolve, but I knew that protecting both economic stability and social justice was essential for enduring progress. Agricultural programs continued to stabilize farm incomes, modernize operations, and extend infrastructure. Critics claimed government interference was excessive, yet the improvements in productivity, rural livelihoods, and community cohesion proved the value of intervention. Rural stability remained crucial for national prosperity. Social welfare measures, Social Security, unemployment assistance, public health programs had become fundamental pillars of public life. These initiatives faced ongoing scrutiny, but I recognized that a society unable to protect its most vulnerable citizens would ultimately undermine its own stability. Morality and practicality converged in our commitment to social security. Political opposition remained a constant force. Business leaders, opposition parties, and media critics argued that reforms were too radical or costly. Court challenges and legislative disputes demanded careful navigation. I realized that leadership required both steadfast commitment and persuasive communication to demonstrate that these measures served the public interest. International developments demanded attention. Rising tensions in Europe and Asia indicated that global conflict might soon touch the United States. While the nation focused on domestic recovery, I knew that awareness, preparation, and strategic planning for foreign challenges were essential. The ability to balance internal priorities with external threats became a defining test of leadership. Eleanor's continued advocacy reinforced the human dimension of governance. Her dedication to women, children, and marginalized groups ensured that our policies addressed not only economic recovery, but social equity and justice. Her work reminded me that effective leadership integrates compassion with decisive action. Communication remains central to maintaining trust. Fireside chats, speeches, and direct engagement allowed me to explain complex policy decisions, respond to skepticism, and strengthen public confidence. Transparency and consistency proved indispensable in sustaining trust during periods of uncertainty. By the end of the late New Deal, the nation had experienced remarkable transformation. Employment programs, infrastructure projects, financial reforms, labor protections, agricultural initiatives, and social welfare measures collectively rebuilt confidence and hope. Yet political resistance, legal scrutiny, social expectations, and the looming threat of global conflict required continued vigilance, principled leadership, and adaptability. These months reinforced my belief that governance in crisis requires courage, vision, empathy, and moral clarity. Recovery is multidimensional, encompassing economic, social, and ethical responsibilities. Only through decisive action, clear communication, and unwavering commitment to the public welfare can a nation navigate uncertainty and emerge stronger, fairer, and more resilient than ever before. Looking back on this period, I understood that the late New Deal was not merely a set of programs. It was a test of leadership, vision, and national character. The lessons learned would guide future generations and demonstrate that even amid profound uncertainty, principled governance can forge hope, opportunity, and a more just and resilient society. As the nation settled into the later years of the New Deal, I observed both the fruits of our labor and the emerging challenges that would define the coming era. The economy had regained some stability, communities were benefiting from infrastructure programs, and citizens increasingly relied on government for protection, opportunity, and guidance. Yet the political and international landscapes were shifting, demanding vigilance, foresight, and principled leadership. Infrastructure projects now connected the nation more cohesively than ever before. Highways, bridges, schools, hospitals, and public utilities brought tangible improvements to everyday life. These initiatives provided not only employment, but a sense of purpose and shared progress. However, critics continued to claim overreach, inefficiency, or excessive spending. I understood that visible achievements would always be subject to scrutiny, and I was prepared to defend both the necessity and morality of our actions. Financial reforms had strengthened the banking system and stabilized markets. Deposit insurance, regulatory oversight, and investment safeguards reduced systemic risks. Labor protections and wage policies improved working conditions and fairness, yet they remained contested through strikes, lawsuits, and political opposition. I remained steadfast. Long-term economic stability and social justice required firm principles and decisive action. Agricultural and rural programs further strengthened communities outside urban centers. Electrification, soil conservation, modernized equipment, and market stabilization offered farmers opportunities to thrive despite adverse conditions. Critics argued that government interference was excessive, but the improvements in rural livelihoods and community resilience were undeniable. Social welfare programs, social security, unemployment relief, and public health initiatives continued to protect the most vulnerable. Opposition persisted, questioning cost and scope, yet I knew that protecting citizens was both a moral obligation and a practical necessity for national stability. A society that neglects its weakest members cannot endure. Political opposition intensified in both Congress and the media. Business leaders, conservative politicians, and critics argued against the expansion of government programs. Court challenges continued to test the legality of key reforms. I understood that leadership required not only courage but the ability to clearly communicate the rationale behind decisions and to maintain public confidence. Meanwhile, global tensions began to escalate. Conflicts in Europe and Asia signaled that the United States could not remain isolated. I began considering the implications of international instability on our domestic policies, military preparedness, and economic strategy. Balancing internal recovery with emerging external threats required foresight, careful planning, and strategic communication. That Eleanor's ongoing advocacy shaped policy with a human perspective. Her focus on women, children, and marginalized populations ensured that our programs addressed both material needs and social justice. Her work reminded me that effective leadership combines empathy with decisive governance. Communication remained central. Fireside chats, public addresses, and direct engagement with citizens helped explain complex policies, counter skepticism, and build trust. Transparency and consistency were indispensable in reinforcing public confidence and sustaining support during challenging times. By this stage of the late New Deal, the nation had achieved significant progress, yet the landscape remained dynamic. Employment and infrastructure initiatives revitalized communities, financial and labor reforms strengthened stability, rural programs improved livelihoods, and social welfare measures protected vulnerable populations. Yet political opposition, public debate, and the looming shadow of international conflict demanded continued vigilance, principled leadership, and adaptability. These months reinforced my understanding that governance in times of complexity requires courage, vision, empathy, and moral clarity. Recovery and stability encompass not only economic and social dimensions, but ethical responsibilities. Through decisive action, clear communication, and unwavering dedication to public welfare, a nation can navigate uncertainty, strengthen resilience, and uphold the principles of justice and opportunity. Asterisk. As the later years of the New Deal progressed, I found myself navigating a delicate balance between consolidating domestic achievements and preparing the nation for looming international uncertainties. While economic recovery and social reforms had made measurable progress, political opposition and emerging global threats required constant attention and careful decision-making. Infrastructure and public works projects continued to reshape communities. Schools, hospitals, highways, and bridges not only provided employment, but also fostered a renewed sense of civic purpose. Yet, every completed project invited scrutiny from critics claiming government overreach or mismanagement. I understood that visible success must be defended with clarity, resolve, and moral justification. Financial and labor reforms strengthened the foundations of American society. Banking regulations and deposit insurance stabilized the economy, while labor protections and wage reforms improved working conditions. Strikes, lawsuits, and political resistance tested these measures, but I remained convinced that long-term stability required principled and decisive action. Agricultural and rural development programs continued to modernize operations, stabilize markets, and improve community resilience. Critics accused us of excessive intervention, yet the improvements in rural livelihoods, productivity, and social cohesion proved indispensable. Rural stability remained vital for national prosperity and long-term recovery. Social welfare initiatives, Social Security, unemployment relief, and public health programs extended protections to the most vulnerable. Opposition persisted, but I understood that ensuring basic security for citizens was both a moral imperative and a practical necessity for a stable society. A nation that neglects its weakest members cannot endure. Political opposition intensified. Business leaders, conservative politicians, and segments of the media questioned the legitimacy, cost, and scope of our programs. Court challenges and legislative disputes required careful navigation. Leadership demanded steadfast resolve, clear articulation of policy rationale, and constant engagement with the public to sustain trust and confidence. International tensions were rising rapidly. Conflicts in Europe and Asia signaled that the United States could no longer remain isolated. I began to consider how global instability would affect domestic policy, military readiness, and economic strategy. Balancing domestic recovery with emerging external threats required foresight, strategic planning, and meticulous communication with both citizens and international partners. Eleanor's advocacy continued to shape policy with a human perspective. Her dedication to women, children, and marginalized populations ensured that our programs addressed both economic recovery and social justice. Her influence reminded me that effective leadership must integrate empathy with decisive governance. Communication remains central to public confidence. Fireside chats, speeches, and direct engagement explained complex policies, countered skepticism, and strengthened trust. Transparency, consistency, and authenticity were essential for sustaining public support during periods of uncertainty and international tension. WWII this stage. The late New Deal had delivered substantial domestic improvements, yet the nation faced unprecedented political, social, and global challenges. Employment and infrastructure projects revitalized communities, financial reforms ensured economic stability, labor and rural programs fostered fairness and productivity, and social welfare measures protected vulnerable citizens. However, political opposition, public debate, and the escalating international situation demanded vigilance, principled leadership, and strategic foresight. These months reinforced my understanding that governing during periods of uncertainty requires courage, vision, empathy, and moral clarity. Recovery and resilience are multidimensional, encompassing economic, social, and ethical responsibilities. Through decisive action, clear communication, and unwavering dedication to public welfare, a nation can navigate complexity, uphold justice, and emerge stronger and more united than ever before. As the late New Deal approached its final phases, I reflected on both the achievements and the persistent challenges that remained. The nation had made measurable progress. Communities were rebuilding, employment was rising, and social programs were beginning to offer long-term security. Yet political opposition, public debate, and the looming international crises demanded continued attention, careful judgment, and strategic leadership. Infrastructure and public works continued to transform communities nationwide. Schools, hospitals, roads, and bridges not only created jobs, but also renewed civic pride and social cohesion. Despite tangible results, critics persisted, claiming government overreach, inefficiency, or unsustainable spending. I understood that visible accomplishments would always attract scrutiny, and I was prepared to defend both the morality and necessity of our actions. Financial and labor reforms solidified the nation's foundations. Banking regulations, deposit insurance, and market oversight stabilized the economy, while labor protections and fair wage policies improved conditions for workers. Legal challenges, strikes, and political resistance tested these reforms, but I remained committed to principled, decisive action as essential for long-term stability. Rural and agricultural programs strengthened livelihoods and community resilience. Electrification, modernized farming techniques, and market stabilization initiatives helped farmers endure adverse conditions and contribute to the broader economy. Critics questioned government intervention, but the improvement in productivity and community cohesion affirmed its value. Rural stability remained vital to national prosperity. Social welfare measures, Social Security, unemployment insurance, and public health initiatives extended protection to vulnerable citizens. Despite ongoing criticism over cost and scope, I recognized that providing security for those most at risk was both a moral obligation and a practical necessity for national stability. Neglecting the weakest members of society would ultimately undermine the nation. Political opposition remained intense. Business leaders, conservative politicians, and media commentators continued to challenge the legitimacy and scope of government programs. Court challenges and legislative disputes required strategic navigation. Leadership demanded not only courage but clear communication, constant engagement with the public, and unwavering dedication to public welfare. International developments increasingly shaped domestic policy considerations. Rising tensions in Europe and Asia demonstrated that the United States could not remain insulated. Strategic planning, military preparedness, and economic foresight became essential to ensure the nation's security and resilience in the face of potential global conflict. Eleanor's advocacy continued to influence policy decisions with a human perspective. Her focus on women, children, and marginalized groups ensured that our programs addressed both social justice and practical recovery. Her work reminded me that leadership must integrate empathy with decisive action. Communication remained critical. Fireside chats, speeches, and direct engagement helped explain policy decisions, counter criticism, and maintain public trust. Transparency, consistency, and authenticity proved indispensable in sustaining support during periods of uncertainty and growing global tension. By the conclusion of this phase, the late New Deal had produced tangible progress across economic, social, and infrastructural dimensions. Employment and infrastructure initiatives revitalized communities, financial reforms strengthened the economy, labor and rural programs enhanced fairness and productivity, and social welfare measures provided security for vulnerable populations. Yet political opposition, public debate, and global instability underscored the necessity for vigilant, principled, and forward-looking leadership. These months reinforced my belief that effective governance in complex times requires courage, vision, empathy, and moral clarity. Recovery and resilience are multidimensional, encompassing economic, social, and ethical responsibilities. Through decisive action, transparent communication, and unwavering commitment to the public good, a nation can navigate uncertainty, uphold justice, and emerge stronger, more united, and more prepared for the challenges ahead. As the late New Deal reached its culmination, I reflected deeply on the accomplishments, limitations, and ongoing challenges of my administration. The nation had experienced remarkable recovery and transformation, yet persistent political opposition, social debates, and the increasingly volatile international environment demanded vigilance, foresight, and strategic planning. Domestic infrastructure and public works had transformed communities across the country. Schools, hospitals, highways, and bridges not only created jobs, but also fostered a renewed sense of civic identity and communal responsibility. Despite visible achievements, critics remained, asserting government overreach, inefficiency, or unsustainable expenditure. I knew that tangible results must always be accompanied by moral clarity and principled defense. Financial and labor reforms strengthened the foundations of American society. Banking regulations, deposit insurance, and market oversight stabilized the economy, while labor protections and wage policies improved working conditions. Strikes, legal challenges, and political resistance tested these reforms, but I remained committed to decisive, principled action to ensure long-term stability and fairness. Rural and agricultural programs continued to modernize production, stabilize markets, and enhance community resilience. Electrification, soil conservation, and new technologies enabled farmers to thrive despite adversity. Critics argued government intervention was excessive, yet the evident improvements in rural life affirmed the necessity of proactive measures. Rural stability remained critical to national prosperity. Social welfare initiatives, Social Security, unemployment insurance, and public health programs provided essential protection for the most vulnerable. Opposition persisted, but I recognized that safeguarding citizens was both a moral duty and a practical requirement for national stability. A society that neglects its weakest members cannot endure. Political opposition had grown increasingly organized and vocal. Business leaders, conservative politicians, and segments of the media questioned the legitimacy, scope, and cost of our programs. Court challenges and legislative disputes demanded careful navigation. Leadership required courage, strategic communication, and the unwavering ability to justify decisions to the public. Meanwhile, international threats were escalating. Conflicts in Europe and Asia signaled that the United States could no longer remain isolated. I began to evaluate how foreign instability would affect domestic policy, military preparedness, and economic strategy. Balancing internal recovery with external threats required careful planning, foresight, and clear communication with both citizens and global partners. Eleanor's advocacy continued to provide a human dimension to our policies. Her dedication to women, children, and marginalized communities ensured that programs addressed both social justice and practical recovery. Her work reminded me that effective leadership must integrate empathy with decisive action. Communication remained critical. Fireside chats, public speeches, and direct engagement explained policy decisions, countered skepticism, and maintained trust. Transparency, consistency, and authenticity were indispensable for sustaining public support, particularly as the nation faced mounting global tension. By the culmination of the late New Deal, the nation had achieved substantial economic, social, and infrastructural progress. Employment and public works revitalized communities, financial reforms ensured stability, labor and rural programs enhanced fairness and productivity, and social welfare measures protected vulnerable citizens. Yet political opposition, public debate, and the increasingly volatile international situation underscored the need for vigilant, principled, and forward-looking leadership. These months reinforced my understanding that governance during periods of uncertainty and global tension requires courage, vision, empathy, and moral clarity. Recovery and resilience are multidimensional, encompassing economic, social, and ethical responsibilities. Through decisive action, transparent communication, and unwavering dedication to the public good, a nation can navigate uncertainty, uphold justice, and emerge stronger, more united, and prepared for the challenges that lie ahead. Asterisk. As the world edged closer to conflict, I realized that the challenges facing our nation extended far beyond domestic recovery. Economic stabilization and social reforms, while vital, were now intertwined with the need for strategic planning to safeguard our national security and prepare for the possibility of global war. Domestic programs continued to strengthen the country's foundations. Public works, financial reforms, and social welfare initiatives had revitalized communities, stabilized the economy, and protected vulnerable citizens. These measures remained essential, yet the mounting international threats demanded additional focus, attention, and foresight. Political opposition grew louder and more organized. Business leaders, conservative politicians, and media outlets criticized both the scope and cost of government programs. Court challenges and legislative battles persisted, requiring careful navigation and a steadfast commitment to the public good. I knew that leadership in such a time required courage, clarity, and resilience. Military preparedness became a central concern. Though the United States remained officially neutral, I recognized the growing need to strengthen our defense capabilities. Investments in modernization, training, and strategic planning were essential to ensure that, if global conflict reached our shores, the nation would be ready to defend itself. These preparations were met with both support and skepticism, as citizens debated the balance between domestic needs and military readiness. Diplomatic engagement was equally critical. I worked to maintain constructive relations with allies and potential adversaries alike, understanding that negotiation, deterrence, and careful strategy could avert the worst outcomes of international tension. Balancing diplomacy with defense, preparation with prudence, required constant attention and strategic judgment. Eleanor's influence remained invaluable. Her advocacy for social justice, women, children, and marginalized communities ensured that even in times of international uncertainty, our policies continued to protect and empower the most vulnerable. Her work reminded me that leadership is not only about strategic action, but also about moral responsibility and empathy. Communication continued to be a critical tool for governance. Fireside chats, speeches, and public engagement allowed me to explain complex policy decisions, counter misinformation, and maintain public trust. In an era of rising global threats and domestic debate, transparency, consistency, and authenticity were indispensable. By this stage, the nation had achieved considerable domestic progress while facing unprecedented global challenges. Employment, infrastructure, financial stability, labor and rural reforms, and social welfare measures strengthened the country internally. Yet the growing international threats underscored the necessity of vigilant, principled, and strategic leadership. These months reinforced my understanding that governance in times of uncertainty demands courage, foresight, empathy, and moral clarity. Recovery and resilience are multidimensional, spanning economic, social, and ethical responsibilities. Through decisive action, transparent communication, and unwavering dedication to the public good, a nation can navigate uncertainty, safeguard its citizens, and prepare for the challenges that lie ahead. As the New Deal era drew to a close, I found myself reflecting on the immense transformations our nation had undergone. The domestic landscape had been reshaped, communities revived, industries stabilized, and social protections established. Yet, as Europe plunged deeper into conflict, the world beyond our borders reminded me that domestic recovery was only one part of our responsibility. The final stages of the New Deal sought to consolidate gains and address remaining vulnerabilities. Employment programs, infrastructure projects, and financial reforms continued to strengthen communities and stabilize the economy. Social welfare measures provided security for millions, protecting the most vulnerable and promoting a sense of fairness and justice. Despite achievements, political opposition and public debate remained persistent, challenging both the efficacy and legitimacy of our actions. International developments demanded careful attention. The rise of aggression in Europe and Asia presented new risks to global peace and, ultimately, to the safety of the United States. While the nation remained officially neutral, I recognized that preparation and foresight were imperative. Military modernization, strategic planning, and diplomatic engagement became essential components of leadership in these uncertain times. Domestic resilience was equally critical. Infrastructure, financial stability, labor protections, and rural programs had all contributed to a stronger, more self-reliant nation. Yet the pressures of a potential global conflict required that we integrate these domestic gains into a broader strategy of national preparedness. Balancing internal progress with external threats demanded foresight, decisiveness, and moral clarity. Eleanor's influence continued to guide our policies with empathy and justice. Her focus on women, children, and marginalized groups ensured that our efforts protected the vulnerable, even as international tensions escalated. Leadership required not only strategic foresight, but also compassion and moral responsibility. Political discourse remained heated. Opponents questioned both the scope and cost of New Deal programs, and debates over federal authority and individual freedom were pervasive. Navigating these tensions required transparency, consistent communication, and an unwavering commitment to the public good. Leadership was tested not only by crises abroad, but by scrutiny and skepticism at home. As the New Deal era concluded, the nation had emerged more resilient, yet the future remained uncertain. Economic recovery, social protections, and community revitalization had laid a strong foundation. Nevertheless, the specter of global war highlighted the importance of strategic planning, preparedness, and principled leadership. These months reinforced my understanding that guiding a nation through periods of domestic reform and looming international conflict demands courage, vision, empathy, and moral clarity. Recovery and resilience are not singular achievements. They are multidimensional, encompassing economic, social, and ethical responsibilities. Through decisive action, transparent communication, and steadfast commitment to the public good, a nation can navigate uncertainty, safeguard its citizens, and face the challenges of an unpredictable world with confidence and unity. As global conflict intensified, I recognized that the responsibilities of leadership extended far beyond domestic recovery. The nation's resilience, built through years of economic and social reform, would be tested by unprecedented international challenges. Domestically, the final New Deal initiatives continued to strengthen the nation. Employment programs, infrastructure projects, financial reforms, and social welfare measures provided stability, fairness, and security for millions. These efforts, though critical, had to be integrated with preparations for global threats that could disrupt our society and economy. Political opposition and public debate were increasingly intense. Critics challenged the cost, scope, and legitimacy of government programs, while debates over federal authority and individual freedom persisted. Navigating these tensions required transparency, decisive communication, and unwavering commitment to the public good. Leadership demanded both courage and strategic clarity. Military preparedness became a central focus. Although the United States remained officially neutral, I understood the necessity of strengthening our defense capabilities. Investments in modern equipment, training, and strategic planning ensured readiness should conflict reach our shores. These measures were met with both support and skepticism, as the public weighed domestic needs against military priorities. Diplomatic engagement was equally vital. Maintaining alliances, negotiating with potential adversaries, and pursuing strategies to prevent escalation demanded constant attention and careful judgment. Balancing diplomacy with preparedness required foresight, patience, and moral clarity. Eleanor's advocacy continued to provide a human perspective in policymaking. Her focus on women, children, and marginalized populations ensured that social justice remained integral to our strategy, even amidst global uncertainty. Leadership demanded empathy alongside strategic decision-making. Communication remained indispensable. Fireside chats, speeches, and public engagement allowed me to explain complex policies, counter misinformation, and maintain trust. In times of international tension and domestic debate, transparency, consistency, and authenticity were essential. By this stage, the nation had consolidated domestic recovery while simultaneously confronting escalating global threats. Employment, infrastructure, financial stability, labor protections, rural programs, and social welfare measures strengthened internal resilience. Yet, international challenges underscored the necessity of vigilant, principled, and forward-looking leadership. These months reinforced my understanding that governance during times of domestic reform and international crisis requires courage, vision, empathy, and moral clarity. Recovery and resilience are multidimensional, encompassing economic, social, and ethical responsibilities. Through decisive action, transparent communication, and steadfast dedication to the public good, a nation can navigate uncertainty, safeguard its citizens, and assert its role responsibly on the global stage. Asterisk. As global conflict intensified, I recognized that the responsibilities of leadership extended far beyond domestic recovery. The nation's resilience, built through years of economic and social reform, would be tested by unprecedented international challenges. Domestically, the final New Deal initiatives continued to strengthen the nation. Employment programs, infrastructure projects, financial reforms, and social welfare measures provided stability, fairness, and security for millions. These efforts, though critical, had to be integrated with preparations for global threats that could disrupt our society and economy. Political opposition and public debate were increasingly intense. Critics challenged the cost, scope, and legitimacy of government programs, while debates over federal authority and individual freedom persisted. Navigating these tensions required transparency, decisive communication, and unwavering commitment to the public good. Leadership demanded both courage and strategic clarity. Military preparedness became a central focus. Although the United States remained officially neutral, I understood the necessity of strengthening our defense capabilities. Investments in modern equipment, training, and strategic planning ensured readiness should conflict reach our shores. These measures were met with both support and skepticism, as the public weighed domestic needs against military priorities. Diplomatic engagement was equally vital. Maintaining alliances, negotiating with potential adversaries, and pursuing strategies to prevent escalation demanded constant attention and careful judgment. Balancing diplomacy with preparedness required foresight, patience, and moral clarity. Eleanor's advocacy continued to provide a human perspective in policymaking. Her focus on women, children, and marginalized populations ensured that social justice remained integral to our strategy, even amidst global uncertainty. Leadership demanded empathy alongside strategic decision-making. Communication remained indispensable. Fireside chats, speeches, and public engagement allowed me to explain complex policies, counter misinformation, and maintain trust. In times of international tension and domestic debate, transparency, consistency, and authenticity were essential. By this stage, the nation had consolidated domestic recovery while simultaneously confronting escalating global threats. Employment, infrastructure, financial stability, labor protections, rural programs, and social welfare measures strengthened internal resilience. Yet, international challenges underscored the necessity of vigilant, principled, and forward-looking leadership. These months reinforced my understanding that governance during times of domestic reform and international crisis requires courage, vision, empathy, and moral clarity. Recovery and resilience are multidimensional, encompassing economic, social, and ethical responsibilities. Through decisive action, transparent communication, and steadfast dedication to the public good, a nation can navigate uncertainty, safeguard its citizens, and assert its role responsibly on the global stage. Asterisk. As war engulfed Europe and Asia, the United States faced a defining moment. Although officially neutral, the pressures to prepare for potential involvement became unavoidable. I realized that domestic stability, economic resilience, and social welfare had to be balanced with national defense, international diplomacy, and strategic foresight. Domestic programs continued to provide a strong foundation. Employment initiatives, infrastructure projects, financial reforms, and social welfare measures remained essential to maintain public confidence and societal cohesion. Yet, these domestic gains could not be separated from the need to mobilize resources, strengthen the military, and plan for potential conflict. Political opposition intensified as the stakes rose. Critics debated the cost, necessity, and scope of defense preparations, often framing military investment as a threat to domestic priorities. Managing this tension required careful communication, transparency, and principled reasoning. Leadership demanded courage, decisiveness, and moral clarity. Military readiness became a priority. Expanding the Army and Navy, modernizing equipment, and training personnel were essential steps to ensure national security. These actions were met with mixed reactions: support from those recognizing the looming threat, and skepticism from others concerned about excessive expenditure or perceived overreach. I understood that anticipating danger was a moral and strategic imperative. Diplomatic efforts were intricate and delicate. Maintaining alliances, negotiating with potential adversaries, and discouraging escalation required constant vigilance and careful judgment. Effective diplomacy, I knew, must work in tandem with preparation and deterrence. Eleanor's influence continued to provide moral guidance. Her advocacy for vulnerable populations and social justice ensured that even in a time of looming global crisis, policy decisions remained grounded in fairness and empathy. Leadership is not only about strategy, but also about the human dimension of governance. Communication with the public was vital. Fireside chats, public addresses, and personal engagement helped explain complex policy decisions, counter misinformation, and maintain national confidence. In times of uncertainty and escalating global threat, transparency, consistency, and empathy were indispensable, by integrating domestic resilience, social welfare, and economic stability with strategic defense and global diplomacy. The nation could navigate the uncertain path ahead. The decisions made during these months were pivotal, not only for immediate security, but also for establishing the United States' long-term position as a principled, resilient, and globally responsible nation. These weeks reinforced my understanding that leadership during times of global crisis requires courage, vision, empathy, and moral clarity. Domestic preparation and international strategy must coexist, guided by principle and unwavering commitment to the public good. Only then can a nation face uncertainty with confidence and integrity. With the world engulfed in war, the United States stood at a crossroads. Though we were not yet active participants in the conflict, the responsibility to prepare, both militarily and strategically, weighed heavily on my shoulders. The safety of the nation, the stability of our society, and the future of democracy demanded immediate attention and resolute action. Domestic programs continued to fortify our foundation. Employment initiatives, infrastructure projects, financial reforms, and social welfare measures ensured that millions remained secure and the economy stable. These programs were not merely policies. They were instruments of resilience, enabling the nation to withstand both internal and external pressures. Political opposition intensified. Critics challenged the scale, cost, and necessity of military preparation, questioning the balance between domestic needs and national security. Navigating these debates required transparent communication, principled decision-making, and unwavering dedication to the public good. Leadership demanded clarity, courage, and moral resolve. Military modernization and strategic planning became urgent priorities. Expanding the Army and Navy, updating equipment, training personnel, and establishing logistics for rapid mobilization were critical steps. These measures provoked debate, yet I understood that preparing for potential conflict was both a practical necessity and a moral obligation to protect the nation. Diplomacy required equal diligence. Maintaining alliances, negotiating with foreign powers, and managing global perceptions demanded careful attention. I recognized that effective foreign policy and military preparedness must operate in tandem. Guided by prudence, foresight, and ethical judgment, Eleanor's advocacy provided constant moral grounding. Her efforts to support vulnerable populations, advance social justice, and strengthen civil society reminded me that leadership was as much about protecting the human spirit as it was about strategy and governance. Communication with the American public remained essential. Fireside chats, speeches, and public engagements were vital tools to explain complex policies, counter misinformation, and foster national confidence. Transparency, empathy, and consistency were indispensable in sustaining unity and trust during this precarious period. By combining domestic resilience, social welfare, economic stability, military readiness, and diplomatic foresight, the United States could navigate the uncertain path ahead. Decisions made in these months would shape not only our immediate security, but also our long-term role as a principled, resilient, and globally responsible nation. These weeks reinforced a fundamental truth. Leadership during times of impending global crisis requires courage, vision, empathy, and moral clarity. Domestic preparedness and strategic foresight must coexist, guided by principle and a steadfast commitment to the public good. Only then can a nation face uncertainty with confidence, resilience, and integrity. As the conflict in Europe and Asia escalated, I knew the United States faced a decisive period. Our nation remained officially neutral, but the responsibility to prepare and support those fighting for freedom weighed heavily on every decision I made. Domestic security, economic stability, and moral leadership were inseparable from the unfolding global crisis. Domestically, we continued to strengthen the foundation built through years of New Deal reforms. Employment programs, infrastructure projects, financial stabilization, and social welfare initiatives were essential to ensure the nation could withstand both internal pressures and the external threat of war. The American people needed to trust that their government could balance immediate needs with preparations for a potential global conflict. Political opposition and public debate intensified. Critics questioned military buildup, lend-lease support for allies, and the balance between neutrality and preparedness. Navigating these tensions required transparency, clear communication, and principled reasoning. Leadership demanded courage, foresight, and moral clarity. Military and industrial mobilization became critical. Expanding armed forces, modernizing equipment, training personnel, and establishing supply chains required careful planning and decisive action. These measures provoked debate, but I understood that preparing the nation for the uncertain future was both a practical and ethical imperative. Supporting allies was a central concern. Lend-lease and diplomatic coordination with nations fighting aggression demanded careful judgment. Providing assistance while maintaining national security required balancing moral responsibility with pragmatic strategy. Eleanor's guidance continued to shape our approach. Her advocacy for women, children, and marginalized communities ensured that even in wartime, social justice and human welfare remained central to policy decisions. Leadership, I learned, must encompass both strategy and empathy. Communication with the public remained essential. Fireside chats, speeches, and public engagements allowed me to explain policies, maintain trust, and build confidence amid growing uncertainty. Transparency, empathy, and consistency were indispensable in sustaining national unity and resilience. By integrating domestic stability, social welfare, economic preparedness, military readiness, and allied support, the United States positioned itself to navigate the complexities of early wartime strategy. Decisions made during this period would shape both our immediate security and long-term global role as a principled and resilient nation. These months reinforced the enduring truth. Leadership in times of global crisis requires courage, vision, empathy, and moral clarity. Domestic preparation, strategic foresight, and international engagement must coexist, guided by principle and unwavering commitment to the public good. Only through this balance can a nation face uncertainty with confidence, resilience, and integrity. Asterisk. With the full-scale eruption of war across Europe and Asia, the United States entered a period of unparalleled responsibility. Though the conflict had not yet directly engulfed our shores, the implications were clear. We must act decisively, with vision, courage, and moral clarity. The nation looked to me not only for leadership but for reassurance in a world teetering on chaos. Domestically, we intensified mobilization efforts. Employment programs, infrastructure projects, and industrial expansion were aligned to support both civilian needs and potential military demands. Every factory, every workforce, and every program was scrutinized to ensure it contributed to national resilience. I understood that domestic stability and military preparedness were two sides of the same coin. Political opposition became more pronounced. Debates over military expenditures, foreign aid, and civil liberties challenged my administration at every turn. Critics questioned the balance between national security and individual freedoms. Navigating this landscape required transparent communication, principled reasoning, and steadfast adherence to the public good. Leadership in wartime demanded decisiveness, vision, and moral courage. Military preparedness reached unprecedented levels. Expanding the Army and Navy, modernizing equipment, and training personnel for both defense and potential overseas operations became central priorities. These actions sparked debate, but I knew that anticipating threats was both a practical and ethical imperative. Diplomacy remained a delicate endeavor. Coordinating with allies, negotiating with neutral powers, and maintaining international perception required constant vigilance and strategic foresight. I recognized that effective foreign policy must operate hand in hand with military readiness. Guided by both prudence and moral judgment, Eleanor's advocacy continued to illuminate our path. Her tireless work in advancing social justice, supporting vulnerable populations, and strengthening civic institutions ensured that even in wartime, policies remained humane and principled. Leadership is not only about strategy and policy, it is about protecting the values that define us as a nation. Communication with the American people was vital. Fireside chats, public addresses, and personal engagements provided transparency, countered misinformation, and fostered confidence. Maintaining national unity required empathy, consistency, and an unwavering commitment to truth. By integrating domestic stability, social welfare, economic mobilization, military readiness, and global engagement, the United States positioned itself to navigate the complex demands of total war. Decisions made during this time would not only shape immediate security, but also determine the long-term moral and strategic standing of the nation. These months reinforced a profound understanding. Leadership in wartime requires courage, foresight, empathy, and moral clarity. Domestic preparedness and global strategy must coexist, guided by principle and an unwavering commitment to the public good. Only through this balance can a nation confront uncertainty, uphold its values, and emerge resilient and principled. With America now fully engaged in the global conflict, the weight of responsibility was immense. Every decision carried consequences not only for our soldiers and civilians, but for the entire world. The stakes had never been higher. National survival, global freedom, and moral leadership were intertwined, demanding clarity, courage, and unwavering resolve. Domestically, mobilization intensified. Factories shifted to wartime production, labor forces were retrained, and supply chains were expanded to meet both military and civilian needs. The economy was transformed into a war machine, yet maintaining civilian morale and social stability remained paramount. I knew that domestic resilience was inseparable from our capacity to fight effectively abroad. Political debates were fierce. Critics questioned the scale of military spending, rationing, and civil liberties. Some worried about overreach. Others argued for even more decisive action. Navigating this landscape required transparency, principled reasoning, and a steadfast commitment to the public good. Leadership in total war demanded decisiveness, foresight, and moral clarity. Military strategy and coordination became central. Planning large-scale operations, deploying forces overseas, and coordinating with allied commanders required continuous attention. Each decision was fraught with risk, yet hesitation could cost lives and compromise the broader war effort. I understood that strategic decisiveness, guided by principle and intelligence, was the hallmark of effective leadership. Diplomatic engagement remained critical. Coordinating with allies, negotiating supply routes, and maintaining global support required careful judgment and persistence. Aligning military action with diplomatic strategy was essential to ensure the United States contributed effectively to the collective fight for freedom. Eleanor's guidance continued to provide moral grounding. Her advocacy for civilians, refugees, and vulnerable populations reminded me that war, while a test of strategy and power, also demanded empathy, justice, and humane governance. Leadership encompasses both ethical responsibility and operational competence. Communication with the American public remained vital. Fireside chats, speeches, and public engagements provided clarity, countered misinformation, and bolstered confidence. Maintaining unity and resilience required honesty, empathy, and consistent messaging. By integrating domestic mobilization, economic transformation, military strategy, and global coordination, the United States positioned itself to meet the challenges of total war. Decisions made in these months would shape the immediate outcome of the conflict and the long-term moral and strategic standing of our nation. These months reaffirmed a profound truth. Leadership during full-scale global war demands courage, vision, empathy, and moral clarity. Domestic resilience, strategic foresight, and international collaboration must coexist, guided by principle and unwavering dedication to the public good. Only through this balance can a nation endure, lead, and emerge with integrity. As the war progressed into its final phases, the weight of leadership intensified. Every decision carried profound consequences for our soldiers, civilians, and the broader course of history. The United States was no longer merely preparing for war. We were now fully engaged in directing the global effort toward victory, and the moral and strategic stakes could not have been higher. Domestically, our mobilization reached unprecedented levels. Factories produced armaments at staggering rates. Labor forces were retrained for efficiency and precision, and supply chains expanded to support both military operations abroad and essential civilian needs at home. Ensuring the economy could sustain the war effort without collapsing required constant vigilance and adaptive leadership. Political pressures surged. Debates over rationing, wartime taxation, civil liberties, and military strategy became increasingly heated. Critics and opposition leaders scrutinized every action, questioning priorities and the human cost of decisions. Navigating this landscape demanded transparency, principled judgment, and unwavering commitment to the public good. Leadership at this stage required decisiveness, vision, and moral clarity like never before. Strategic military planning and Allied coordination were paramount. We worked closely with Allied commanders to plan offensives, supply logistics, and troop deployments, while maintaining communication across continents. Each operation carried immense risk, yet inaction was a far greater danger. I understood that calculated decisiveness, grounded in principle and intelligence, was essential to achieving victory. Diplomacy remained critical. Maintaining coalition unity, managing post-war planning discussions, and negotiating with neutral or occupied nations required a careful balance of firmness and persuasion. Aligning strategic, military, and diplomatic actions was necessary to secure both immediate success and a just post-war order. Eleanor's guidance continued to shape our ethical approach. Her tireless advocacy for civilians, refugees, and marginalized populations ensured that even in the heat of global conflict, our decisions remained grounded in humanity and justice. Leadership, I realized, is as much about protecting human values as it is about strategic execution. Communication with the American public was essential. Fireside chats, speeches, and engagements reinforced understanding, countered misinformation, and strengthened confidence. Sustaining unity, morale, and resilience demanded honesty, empathy, and consistent messaging. By integrating domestic stability, industrial mobilization, military strategy, Allied coordination, and ethical responsibility, the United States was positioned to guide the global effort toward victory. Decisions made during this period would determine not only the outcome of the war, but also the long-term moral and strategic standing of the nation. These months reinforced an enduring lesson. Leadership during the climactic stages of global conflict requires courage, vision, empathy, and moral clarity. Domestic resilience, strategic foresight, Allied coordination, and ethical governance must coexist, guided by principle and unwavering dedication to the public good. Only through this balance can a nation lead effectively, endure hardship, and emerge with integrity. As the war approached its final phases, every day brought new challenges and decisions of immense consequence. The United States was now a full participant in a global struggle, responsible not only for the security of our own nation, but for the coordination and support of Allied forces around the world. The pressure was unrelenting, yet it was a responsibility I carried with resolve, clarity, and a profound sense of moral obligation. Domestically, production and mobilization continued at unprecedented rates. Factories operated around the clock, labor forces adapted to ever-changing needs, and supply chains were expanded to ensure both military and civilian stability. Maintaining the balance between war production and the well-being of the American people required constant attention and adaptive leadership. Political debate intensified. Questions about rationing, taxation, civil liberties, and the allocation of resources challenged my administration at every turn. Critics scrutinized priorities and human costs. Navigating this complex landscape required transparency, principled reasoning, and unwavering commitment to the public good. True leadership demanded courage, foresight, and ethical clarity. Strategically, coordination with Allied commanders was essential. Planning large-scale operations, managing logistics, and synchronizing troop movements across multiple theaters tested every ounce of our resolve. Each decision carried risk, yet inaction or hesitation could cost countless lives and imperil the broader war effort. I understood that decisive, principled strategy was essential to achieve victory and protect the values we held dear. Diplomacy remained a central concern. Sustaining coalition unity, negotiating with neutral nations, and planning for the post-war world required constant vigilance and careful judgment. Military action and diplomatic strategy had to be harmonized to secure both immediate success and lasting justice. Eleanor's unwavering guidance continued to provide moral clarity. Her advocacy for refugees, civilians, and vulnerable populations ensured that even amidst the demands of total war, our policies remained rooted in humanity and justice. Leadership, I learned, encompasses both operational competence and ethical responsibility. Communication with the American people remained a priority. Fireside chats, public addresses, and direct engagement helped sustain morale, counter misinformation, and reinforce confidence. Unity, resilience, and public trust depended upon consistent, honest, and empathetic communication, by integrating domestic mobilization, military strategy, allied coordination, and moral responsibility. The United States was able to lead effectively during the climactic stages of the war. Decisions made in this period would determine not only immediate outcomes, but also the long-term ethical and strategic position of the nation. These months underscored a timeless truth. Leadership in the final phases of global conflict demands courage, vision, empathy, and moral clarity. Domestic stability, strategic foresight, coalition cooperation, and ethical governance must coexist, guided by principle and steadfast commitment to the public good. Only through this balance can a nation endure, lead, and emerge with integrity. Asterisk. As the war neared its conclusion, the weight of responsibility was immense. Every action, every decision, carried consequences that would resonate for decades. The United States had not only fought a global conflict, but had assumed a leadership role in shaping the post-war world. Victory, however, was only the beginning. The challenges of peace, reconstruction, and moral responsibility were just as demanding. Domestically, we faced the enormous task of preparing the nation for the transition from wartime to peacetime. Industries that had been fully mobilized for war needed to adjust. Workers required retraining, and returning veterans required support and reintegration. The economy had to shift without collapsing, ensuring that prosperity could return while maintaining social stability. Political debates intensified. Questions about the extent of federal authority, taxation, social programs, and civil liberties dominated discussions. Critics scrutinized every decision, while allies and government sought consensus on policies that would affect millions. Navigating this landscape demanded transparency, ethical judgment, and unwavering commitment to the public good. Leadership at this stage required not only strategic foresight, but also moral clarity and patience. Internationally, planning for post-war governance and security was paramount. Coordinating with allies, laying the groundwork for organizations to preserve peace, and negotiating the terms of reconstruction were complex but essential. I recognized that the moral standing of the United States and the stability of the international system depended upon thoughtful, principled engagement. Diplomacy and strategy were inseparable. Negotiating agreements, ensuring fair distribution of resources, and supporting nations ravaged by war demanded constant attention. Leadership required balancing the immediate needs of national security with long-term commitments to global justice and stability. Eleanor's guidance remained invaluable. Her advocacy for social welfare, education, and civil rights ensured that even during periods of reconstruction, policies maintained a foundation of humanity and equity. Leadership, I understood, is measured not only by victories and strategy, but by the preservation and advancement of human values. Communication with the American people was essential. Sharing plans for post-war reconstruction, fostering understanding of international commitments, and ensuring confidence in the government required honesty, empathy, and clarity. Unity and trust were the pillars upon which a successful post-war transition would be built. By integrating domestic rebuilding, international planning, and ethical leadership, the United States positioned itself to emerge from war not only victorious, but principled and resilient. Decisions made in these months would define our nation's trajectory for decades, shaping both global order and domestic prosperity. These months reinforced a profound truth. Leadership in times of immense transition requires courage, vision, empathy, and moral clarity. Balancing domestic stability with international responsibility, integrating strategic foresight with ethical governance, and maintaining commitment to human values ensures that a nation can navigate uncertainty, lead effectively, and emerge with integrity.